Hi there. Let's have a look at deploying a web app properly. So we did this before. We did sort of development mode. We ran the server on a development port, just the development server that came with. I used Rails in that video. This video I'm going to use Django, which I have done. I've done the same exercise. It runs a server on port 8000. So I'm not going to need that forwarded for this one, so I'm just going to comment that out in the Vagrant file. The other stuff that I've done here so far is really, it's a sort of mushed together the code from exercise 4, where I got the Postgres database running and I got the Nginx server installed. And then the code from my exercise 7 solution, where I had Django running in development mode. And I'm going to now do it sort of properly. And I've just stripped out like the running of the development server because I know I'm not going to need that. Otherwise, this is sort of stuff we've seen already, just kind of smashed together. So what I've done here so far, I've already done the Vagrant up, so that stuff that's in the file is already deployed. And what I have on the server now is I expect, yeah. So I have Nginx installed. I haven't configured it. I imagine I have Postgres and Django installed, but I haven't really no easy way to tell from where we are. Yeah, okay, so that's done its thing. So what I need to do now is sort of figure out how do I get things going and sort of running in a way that will scale to more than maybe a couple of users. And I have some instructions on the course website about this, which I'm going to kind of follow here. I'm going to skip over some details because, once again, I don't care about Django in this video. I care about deployment. So I need to do things like, so I imagine I have Postgres installed. And so I need to get Django talking to it. So I'm going to have to change my database configuration so that everything is set up that way. Which in Django is in the settings. So I'm going to change my database configuration to point to Postgres. At this point, everything should break. So as it was, I did a migrate on a SQLite database. Actually, the migrate should work, I guess. In fact, let's see what happens. So if I do that settings, and I rerun my provisioner, because of what I have in my my chef recipe, it should try to do the migrate again. And actually, if the database is working, that should work. And I suspect what will happen here is that we're going to fail because I don't have any of the stuff for Python and Postgres to talk to each other installed. And maybe just while I'm waiting for that failure, I did a little behind the scenes work here. This is stuff straight out of the instructions. It says I need these two Python package, Ubuntu packages, and I need, in addition to the Django package, I need the Python Postgres and the uWSGI I'm going to need later. So I'm going to throw that in there right now. So has this, yeah, this has failed because somewhere in there it's going to say, I think, no module named CMPT, which is the Postgres Python package. So as before, this is sort of iterative process of what works. I think this should work and it doesn't, and figuring out why. And of course, you can always SSH into the VM itself and kind of poke around if you need to, or have a look at a log file. Because I've sort of done this before to create the instructions, I have a pretty good idea of where things are going to head, but there's just always surprises no matter what happens. Okay, I have a little bit of faith this is going to work. The install of the CyclePG takes a while because it has to get compiled. So maybe while that's going, I'm just going to have a quick look. One of the things that's happening in here is the Nginx configuration file is being put in place, and I copied it over again just to sort of prepare for the video. But what's here is the default that came when I installed the Ubuntu package. So really this cookbook file stanza right now is just replacing the default with the default. But now in my repository, I have the option to make a few changes here and actually get things working. So like I said, I'm going to install with uWSGI, which is what my instructions use. It's a similar kind of thing in Rails where you sort of set up a separate server. So I'm going to run the uWSGI server or the Unicorn server for Rails or whatever it is. That's going to get run separately. And I'm going to talk between that application server and my front-end web server over a Unix socket, because apparently that's the fastest way to do that. Okay, so that seems to have worked. It looks like my database migration ran. I should have a Django database. And actually, why don't we give it a try? So I should be able to go into the server, go to my project, and do let's see. Well, I can do a DB shell. And with any luck, that will get me the Postgres shell where I can have a look, and I can see that I have my tables there. And I think I should have some initial data. Whoops. Yeah, so my initial data got loaded into the Postgres database. Life is going pretty good, actually. Usually these things don't go this well. But so again, in my recipe, I have now actually some faith that the migration and the loading of the initial data fixture is happening. I'm not actually running the server, and that's going to be the tricky bit here. So I have my server is going to look for, my front-end server is going to look for a back-end server, which is good. I need to replace the root with this stuff from the instructions, which is basically go to the application server using some parameters that I'm going to have to get in place here. And I guess if I want static files here as well, maybe I'll do that while I'm looking at the file. So I'm going to have my style sheet and JavaScript and stuff in this URL, and I'm going to get it with the Django static tools in there. So again, I don't want to go through every single detail here of this. I've got to create this file. I've got to get that in as a cookbook file. A couple other things to get everything started. So I'm going to pause here. We'll let time pass behind the scenes and see how that goes. Okay, I'm at a point here where I have followed the sort of basic instructions for getting the uWSGI stuff working. And I was at a kind of interesting point here where it's not actually working right at the moment as I start things up, but it's different. So instead of showing me this default page, I'm getting a 502 bad gateway, which is an indication that Nginx is sort of doing its job, but it's not finding the application server behind. Django for me, the uWSGI thing running Django, or Unicorn or whatever it is. So that means that I have to start it up. I should obviously do this in a better way, but I can here, and I have the command in my history because I was just trying it, I can actually do what would be done by the recipe or by the startup command, which is run with my initialization file. And I can do this just in the foreground manually. Start up my uWSGI server. It claims it's running. And so with any luck, if I come back here, it's working. At least to the extent that I expect. So my database is working. Okay, so everything's working if only that uWSGI would start up by default. And so I've given a hint on that one as well. I've sort of given you this startup command, which is the sort of first part of it is exactly what I just copied and pasted. So if I kill that off, with any luck, if I restart the thing, hopefully that startup command does its job, and hopefully it will fire things off. I don't really want this to happen. I don't want to have this happen where I like have to manually reboot the thing all the time. So I will put I'll put a call to the shell command that again I know is in there. Just so it fires when the initial vagrant up is done. I don't have to reboot my server every time, because of course if we start your thing up and it doesn't run, we'll assume it doesn't run. Probably provision the server and then reboot it is a weird thing to have to do. So let's see here. Still bad gateway. So I'm going to have a look here, do a little investigating and see why. So I'm going to do something like, well, doing it manually. I don't know if that did anything or not. Oh. Aha. See, this is the kind of stuff that happened. This is just reality. I created this file, but I don't think I put it in place. For all my care, yeah, I didn't actually... Yeah, see. What I have here, I have a startup script that isn't actually doing anything. That's the default. So let's get that where it belongs. Then I at least have a prayer of having it work. And this is... see, that's nice. I love it when things go wrong. That's just the reality of it. Why doesn't it work? Because I didn't even ask for it to try to work. So now let's see here. If I do a vagrant provision, with any luck, it'll fire that off and it will start it up now because of that command, and it will start it again on reboot because that command gets run when the system boots, just as part of the normal startup. Okay, where were we there? I had to take a little pause to get things working, and well, I learned something. I had the startup command, and it turns out it's really picky about whether you have DOS or Windows line endings. So I had to make sure I had the Unix style, not the DOS Windows style, new line characters. Okay, and now with any luck, I think things are probably working. Yeah. So I just did a reload, a provision. Like I haven't done anything manually here to set things up. And I'm now at a point where I'm pretty confident about that. I should be able to reboot the VM and have everything come up. I should be able to do a vagrant destroy and vagrant up and have everything come up. And I'm going to check that at least quickly here, make sure I can reboot the server, which is a vagrant reload. Of course, you kind of expect all this stuff to be there when something starts up. So again, I'm going to take a second here, make sure that works. Okay, so my VM restarted, and with any luck, yeah. So I got everything working here. My votes are tallying, so I can both read and write to the database. And again, just to be complete, I would probably do a vagrant destroy here and a vagrant up. I'm not going to bother in the video. I'm pretty sure I've got it here. I would do this before I handed it in, frankly, if there were marks on the line. So good luck with exercise 9 and your project.